There was, in fact, a poll recently of people in the industry that saw 35% saw new backhaul as the #1 challenge to market entry for small cells and DAS. And the second biggest challenge, coming in at 23%, were the difficulties associated with obtaining rights to install small cells. So we're working very hard at the federal, state, and local levels to try to address those issues and more in an effort to streamline wireless deployments, because anything that's a cost is going to slow us all down, and it's going to slow down eventually this industry from completely taking off. It's only a matter of time, but I certainly know, I'm a former regulator myself. I used to serve on the Federal Communications Commission, and I kind of know the trouble that regulators can cause firsthand. I suppose I caused my share in my day. But I also know that with the proper education, that government can be helpful. And we're all about that kind of education. That's what we do every day. And as a result, I'm happy to report that PCIA has really made progress on the regulatory front in a lot of different ways. We've made some real breakthroughs. It was just earlier this month, I was able to testify in front of Congress, in front of the committee that oversees us is the Senate Commerce Committee. And they were really singing from our hymnal. They were saying, how can we do more? The title of the hearing was Removing Barriers to Wireless Broadband Deployment. I mean, imagine that. We couldn't ask for a better topic. It was sort of our wish list. And I had the privilege to represent you in front of the House Commerce Committee earlier this year in the summer, and they had a hearing on the same topic. So this may come as a shock to you, but Congress is actually trying to find ways to help us. And right now they're engaged in developing legislation as a result of those hearings in both the House and Senate to try to find ways that they can streamline wireless infrastructure deployment. And they asked a lot of questions about small cells and DAS, and we're looking for your input, and they're looking for our input on how we can help. And we'll be getting a lot of that from you here over the next couple of days. We've succeeded in getting DAS and small cells excluded from some really heavy regulatory requirements. We were able to convince the FCC in last year's infrastructure order to exclude facilities that meet certain size limits from federal environmental and historic review processes. I'm sure a lot of you have seen real progress on the ground as a result of that. Not each and every node has to be treated as if it's a tall tower now. It can be not going through that kind of federal review. We helped the FCC recognize that was the right way to go, because they, again, are trying to find ways to help us. They recognize that densification is going to be a big part of the solution. They wish they had more spectrum. They don't. So they're trying to use every solution that they possibly can to help meet consumer demand for data. So now, as a result of all these efforts, our members have a clearer runway to install on thousands of qualifying facilities, including utility poles and other non-tower structures, without having to worry about all those compliance regulations. But we all know, and I'm sure you're thinking, but wait a minute, we still have plenty of problems out there, and there's a lot of work left to do that we're engaged in. Our members provide us examples all the time of roadblocks that you have, and we relay that back to policymakers at all levels of government. Right now, we're working with the FCC to examine potential new exclusions for you. These include streamlining processes that would help build on last year's success on poles and utility structures. We're trying to facilitate DAS and small cells on historic property in historic districts. You'll hear more about that from Paul Dari, who's going to be here from the FCC, joining us on tomorrow's regulatory panel. And we're anxious to hear what he has to say as well. And we're also trying to clear the way for wireless facilities on federal lands and properties. Federal lands comprise 30% of the landmass of the United States, and yet they're some of the worst places to go. And you also have federal buildings, which are often in really attractive urban areas that could be a good spot to locate a facility. But nobody wants to go to do business with the government because it's so difficult to negotiate a lease. Well, we've worked with the administration. We've worked with all the different agencies to approve access to these facilities. Also worked with DOD to make sure that you can get access to wireless for families of military in the military that are there. We had a big breakthrough. We're working hard on pole attachment rules across the country. But in Washington State, just last week on Friday, we were able to get them to agree that they'll provide wireless attachers with more access, more efficient timelines, and more reasonable attachment rates. So it's just an example, of another success just last week alone. We led the effort to make that possible, and we're working with a number of other states too to hammer out similar deals. We're looking in updating rules in Arkansas right now. We're ensuring a level playing field for competitive attachers in Colorado. So despite the many challenges that remain, we're making progress on them at the FCC, at Capitol Hill, and in the states as well, and in localities. People are increasingly getting, that they need these devices. Even policymakers all have these, and they have kids that suck up a lot of bandwidth, just like our kids do. And it's easier and easier to convince them to basically let us do our job, let us do our business to serve their constituents. So on top of this, it's not all about policy, though, because we have this great regulatory history. We've done a lot for the industry, but we're also launching an effort on the technical front to promote streamlined best practices for deployment. With analysts projecting that the demands for the HetNet could jump quickly, we keep waiting for it, but we know it's going to happen eventually. We need to make sure that we can serve as a clearinghouse for the entire industry to be able to respond cost effectively. We hear repeatedly that what's holding back small cells and DAS from taking off are these cost drivers I talked about, and the goal is to reduce the need for costly customizations, to create economies of scale, and to improve and optimize field deployments and accelerate time to market. So this initiative is designed to mitigate costly rework, which is an all too common problem in today's industry. We heard some amazing numbers yesterday. A few of us were meeting at the Council of Founders, and it was just shocking to see how much of this work needs to be redone. So on Thursday, following this conference, some of us are going to stay behind and or call in to initiate what's going to be a series of working group discussions. Our newly reconstituted Innovation and Technology Council, chaired by Jake McLeod, who's here, and a number of folks here, has been really hard at work. These committees are putting the final touches on some white papers that they're going to be reporting out on Thursday, and we'll get them out publicly, hopefully shortly thereafter. The DAS and Small Cell Group is led by Ken Sandfield of Solid, and the Street Furniture Group is led by Jim Lockwood of Aero Solutions, and the Front Haul Backhaul Group is led by Don Bach of Nokia SAC Wireless. And they've all done a great job of bringing that together, and I'm sure you'll all find those wonderful. And after we're done with working through those, we're going to have that group help determine which cost elements they think the HetNet Forum and PCIA should take on. Among the kind of cost drivers that we're going to look at are backhaul, power availability, pole attachment issues such as location cost and make-ready issues, and the need for qualified personnel in the field. We'll also touch, of course, on the regulatory issues I mentioned that we're already working on, such as zoning, permitting, historic preservation, and tribal approval issues, which are growing increasingly difficult. Our overarching goal is really to make sure that we can achieve more consistency in the deployment practices so that your pain points are addressed. And I think we have the right group that's in this room today and is going to be with us through Thursday to do that. I'm really concerned that when this industry takes off, we need to have a trained, qualified workforce that even today we're seeing we don't have for the level of deployment that we're at now. So thinking ahead, PCI won part of a $3 million grant that was awarded to the Virginia State University by the Department of Labor to help develop training programs that can help the wireless workforce in the future to meet these kind of demands. And we put together their application. We got a lot of industry support for that. We're also working with the Telecommunications Industry Registered Apprenticeship Program. We want to create apprenticeships that are recognizing competencies and credentials so that we can have more consistent definitions of jobs. And we want to get, with your input, apprenticeships in small cell and DAS installation as well as some RF skill sets. And we really want to leverage your leadership. This the beauty of the HetNet Expo is that we have all this engineering leadership. A lot of it's in the room or in your companies, and they can help us to address the technical skills that we need. You tell us what you think you need, whether it be for tower technicians, small cell and DAS installers, as well as RF engineers. We can learn from our membership what you think is necessary in the field to improve this process so that we create a consistent and really streamlined process for deployment, and then we train to those best practices. I think it's something that we need to get on because it takes a long time to get these programs in place. It takes a long time to graduate sufficient people to actually make a difference on the ground. So we think we need to get going right now on that. And consumers in the end just look at these things through their device. They want to make sure these things work. They get tired of seeing that little circle turn. And we are here to figure out what it is that we need to do to meet that consumer demand. We have a panel on understanding the connected consumer, because that's what's going to drive our business going forward, and we need to understand that. So I'm thrilled that we're here in LA to gather industry together. We put our heads together, and I think we can make real progress in just 2 days that we couldn't otherwise make if we didn't come together and try to figure out how we can move the ball forward. Our goal at the HetNet Forum and at PCIA is to strengthen your bottom line. We want to remove regulatory hurdles. We want to lower costs. We want to facilitate faster and better, more efficient, better done deployments, and we want to train the workforce of the future. And we certainly are in the right place to do it. We have the right experts who know how to move our industry forward. We have the carriers here, the vendors here, the systems integrators, and enterprise is well represented at this event. So the whole ecosystem is under one roof, and I think we can make great things happen. And it's a great opportunity for you all to connect with your colleagues in a place you really can't do it any place better. And that's why I think folks choose to participate with us, and I really appreciate all the support. We want to create value for you, and I think we're undertaking a new initiative here that's going to help do that better than we ever have. There's plenty to learn here. We have an amazing exhibit hall, a sold-out exhibit hall. We'll have some time this morning and tomorrow morning to really get into some of the fantastic technology that's being developed and some of the great services that are being offered, and a great opportunity to network and to see what is out there. And tonight we're going to have a heck of a party too. Any of you who were at our gala last year, remember I'm kind of a very amateur musician, but we have some serious professionals here tonight. I'm obsessed with music, so we spent a lot of time picking a great band that's going to be at Pershing Square Park right across the street at the early evening this morning. Great time to get a little party together. We got some food trucks out there. So there's rock and roll, there's food, there's booze. I mean, but we got to work hard today to get there. So I may even break out a harp unless somebody stops me and play with those guys. So again, I want to thank our sponsors for all the support and the membership, for all that you've done over the year, and thanks to all you who made it out here to California from far and wide. And I want to thank our PCI staff for putting together a great show. Today we're all fortunate to be in the company of some of the brightest minds, the real who's who of the HetNet industry. So thanks for showing up, thanks for being here, and let's get the show started. I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Don Hewitt, who is a real great leader in our industry, somebody who knows a lot about this business. He's from PCI member Nokia Networks. As head of service sales in North America, Don's responsible for leading service development and strategy and supporting service offerings and sales. Nokia's service business includes care, network implementation, systems integration, network planning and optimization, and managed services. He has over 20 years of experience in the telecom industry, and a lot of experience helping major telecom operators introduce new services and technologies in their networks. He's really a visionary in our industry. He knows the engineering and the business top to bottom. So I bring you Don Hewitt.
Thank you. Thanks. It's great to be here this morning and have this opportunity to kick off the expo. I appreciate everyone coming in either last night or braving the traffic this morning. I know it can be quite difficult to get over here at different times. We have actually from our team, we have a few people from Nokia and a number of people from SAC here as well. So hope you have an opportunity to talk with some of them as we go through the rest of the agenda here. So what I'd like to talk about is maybe a little broader topic than purely the HetNet aspect, which is really how we see the world evolving, how we see what we call the programmable world, and what this will drive for networks of the future. So what I'd like to do, if I get this, there you go, is go right through three pieces. First, let's talk about why. What do we see as really where people are going with how they're going to use communications and what this is going to drive in terms of demands in networks. Next, a little bit of what. How do we see 5G technology emerging to satisfy these needs? And finally, the how, which comes back to all of us in this room. How do we evolve to these networks, and what do we need to do in the vendor and the service provider community to really bring about this vision? We're going to start with a very short video we put together, just showing some things we see representing change over the next, about 10 years. And I think you'll find it interesting. When I look at it, I see a lot of things where change has been moving very quickly so far, but it's going to move even faster going forward. So let's roll the video. Okay, thank you. So what we looked at, it's a lot of change. I think when I look at this, some is evolutionary. It's things we've seen going all along. Some is much more revolutionary. It's completely new kinds of applications, new kinds of ways we're going to connect in the future. And where we see us going is we're going from communications today, where we may have a phone, a laptop, a tablet, connected most of the time, to a situation where much more is going to be connected all the time. We'll be connected at home, we'll be connected on the go with various wearables. We're going to be connected with different bandwidth. We can expect to be able to download a movie in a minute if we want to. We're going to have very, very high-speed applications, something we call tactile internet, where you can basically interact with things in real time remotely. And it'll enable not just new forms of communication to people, but new forms of automation. Cars, industrial applications, energy, entertainment, and so on. We see basically an evolution from around 5 billion connected people and devices today to 50 billion connected devices in the future. So we really see the programmable evolving very significantly. Today, again, we have about, on the order of 5 billion connections that you typically have as a personal device of some sort. And we see this evolving to around 50 billion connected things. So about half of these things may look like a traditional device, half may be completely different. Some will be sensors, some may be new kinds of devices or applications, and each one of these is going to put different demands on the network, different demands on what we need to do to serve our consumers going forward. Let's take a look at just one area that's moving actually very quickly lately, autonomous cars. It's almost hard to think about how fast this is moving. Just this year, a car traveled across the country 3,400 miles in less than 9 days autonomously. Very significant accomplishment. Now, I know every day we're reading about headlines as well as some debates about how successfully autonomous cars will run out, but it's a trend that's moving very quickly. In the future, we'll really be able to sit back in our cars, do what we want on email, do what we want on entertainment, and let the car take us through the route, planning its way through traffic as it goes. And in fact, I'm already seeing some announcements of cars being delivered in the very near future with some autonomous capability, where you can actually take your hand off the wheels at some point and have it drive for you. Just think about the network applications in terms of being able to have the reliability, the performance, and the latency you need to be able to interact with a car driving down the road and providing it the information it needs. Just almost mind-boggling in terms of how this is going to drive our industry forward. So let's look at some of these demands. And basically, we're going to see demands for capacity. Going from 5 billion to 50 billion devices is an enormous increase in the number of users and the amount of capacity. We're going to see demands for higher data rates as we have new kinds of applications and more video-rich applications in the network. And latency is going to be very important. With voice or video today, latency in the 100 to 10 millisecond range is perfectly fine. As we look at applications we're going to interact with in real time, tactile kind of applications, we'll have to get down to millisecond kind of latency. That's going to have implications not just on the bandwidth we need to offer through the network, but the whole network architecture to deliver that. And we see 5G as really bringing us the flexibility to do what we can't do today. So one of the things I know, it's really a main subject of what we do in this room, is networks are becoming denser and denser every day. The driving to denser HetNets is, I think, obviously a challenge we're all facing here, and we see this as continuing. We see moving to ultra-dense networks in city centers and other areas of dense coverage. And we see networks really evolving to have a range of access technologies, potentially different spectrum, different spectral efficiency, and different density of base stations to support different kinds of needs. Most critical in the ultra-dense areas, but then we need to have a cost-effective solution in other areas as well. And the key is that this then has to be managed as be manageable as a consistent network for our operators. So we've talked about some of the drivers, the capacity, the coverage, the bandwidth, and the latency. Let's look at how we see 5G responding to this. So first we see with 5G is a little bit different than previous generations of technology. It's going to be more of integration of both existing and new technologies to serve needs. So for example, in ultra-dense deployments, we would expect 5G to have new 5G bands offering some of the highest bandwidth over short distances, coupled with existing 4G or LTE and Wi-Fi networks. What's going to be important in this then is different deployment scenarios to meet different needs, but also an architecture that lets us manage all of this as a unified solution. So let's look at some of the technologies we see enabling this. So just one point I wanted to make before we go into this slide is the technologies, the standards, and the specific spectrum are still under study. So the details will be coming out over the next few years, but this is really where we see some of these things going. Am I fading out? I'm sorry, it sounds like I may be fading from the room. Is it all right? Okay. So basically, first is spectrum. We see a need for additional spectrum. Spectrum has been a challenge in the industry from the very beginning. We're going to need new bands in centimeter and millimeter wave ranges to give us basically performance and data rates of over a gigabit. On the other end, we'd see new bands under 700 megahertz would have the advantage of penetration and coverage. So again, the specific new spectrum is going to unfold. We'll see where that goes and how much spectrum can be identified, but it's going to give us particularly some new capabilities on the high frequency area. Once we go to higher frequencies, then we can really take beamforming and MIMO to more of an extreme. Right now, beamforming is being used to improve capacity and decrease interference. We see beamforming evolving all the way to the point of tracking individual devices. So we can basically have the network target individual devices and avoid interference and offer maximum capacity to each user. Going down to the bottom, another key technology is going to be flexible frame design, where we can adjust the control frame design and the data frame design to really serve different types of application flows simultaneously. And the upper right, multi-technology integration is something that started a little bit today. We're already seeing aggregation of carriers in LTE and even between FD and TD-LTE in some cases. We see this going much further and being able to have the network intelligently aggregate spectrum and different technologies to provide a consistent application flow and user experience across those technologies. That's going to be very important as we evolve these networks, because it'll simplify the process of reforming spectrum from one generation to another and also help us with overall spectrum management in the long run. And finally, in the lower right, architecture is going to be another area that's going to evolve. We talked about low latency. In today's networks, you go from the cell site back to a remote gateway in the network, which introduces quite a bit of latency. If we have to have a very low latency application, we may need to have the gateway right near the cell sites, essentially local gateways, as well as remote gateways when they're more efficient. So we see 5G giving us an architecture that has the flexibility to have different architectures for different types of services at the same time. So those were a couple of things we see as kind of highlights of where we see 5G technology going. Now let's talk a little bit about how we get there and the challenges we're going to face as a community to bring about this vision. So first, first I wanted to talk about access. Access is going to evolve from where we are today. Today we're seeing operators having deployed, on the macro side, single RAN solutions where we have basically one base station, one hardware platform supporting multiple technologies at the same time. Some of this is even coming into small cell platforms now. That gives us the ability to have high capacity and flexibility at the base station level. What we see next is centralization and virtualization through cloud technologies, which will give us the ability to